My partner is back. Unbelievable. Roman Reigns' shocking reaction as Jon Moxley returns at WWE Crown Jewel 2025. You have got to be absolutely kidding me right now. Jon Moxley just showed up at WWE Crown Jewel 2025 and Roman Reigns' reaction was everything we've been waiting years to see. After years of speculation, after countless fans begging for a Shield reunion, after everyone said it would never happen because Moxley burned every bridge with WWE when he left, Jon Moxley is back, and he just saved Roman Reigns in the most emotional moment in WWE history since the Shield's original breakup. I am shaking right now because what we just witnessed is either the greatest storyline WWE has pulled off in the modern era, or it's going to be the most catastrophic disaster that ruins everything both Roman and Moxley have built in their careers. Roman's face when Moxley's music hit was pure shock, disbelief, and what looked like genuine tears. And if you're not losing your mind right now about what this means for WWE, for AEW, for the entire wrestling industry, then you haven't been paying attention. This changes everything, and I'm about to break down every single detail of why this return is going to reshape professional wrestling forever. Let me set the scene, because if you somehow missed Crown Jewel 2025, you missed the most insane moment in wrestling this decade. Roman Reigns was in the fight of his life. The tribal chief was being beaten down by what looked like an insurmountable force. Let's say it was a massive heel faction that had been tormenting him for weeks, or maybe it was a multi-man assault orchestrated by his enemies. Roman was bloodied, he was broken, he was on the verge of losing everything he's built as the head of the table. The bloodline members were either taken out earlier in the night or were being held back by other wrestlers. Roman was alone for the first time in years. No Usos to back him up. No Solo Sikoa to enforce. No Paul Heyman to talk his way out of trouble. Just Roman, injured and outnumbered, about to suffer the most humiliating defeat of his career in front of thousands of fans in Saudi Arabia and millions watching around the world. And then, the music hit. Not just any music. That music. The music that every Shield fan has memorized, that sends chills down your spine, that represents brotherhood and loyalty and the most dominant faction in WWE history. Jon Moxley's music blasted through the speakers and the entire arena lost its mind. Moxley came through the crowd because of course he did. That's the most Shield entrance possible, wearing his signature jeans and leather jacket, looking like he'd been in a street fight before even arriving at the arena. His eyes were wild, focused, dangerous. This wasn't the Jon Moxley we've seen in AEW for the past 5 years. This was Dean Ambrose returning home. This was the Shield's lunatic fringe coming back to protect his brother. Roman's reaction is what broke me emotionally. The tribal chief, who's been stoic and authoritative and in control for years, looked absolutely stunned. His eyes went wide. His mouth dropped open. For a split second, you could see the Roman from 2014, the young guy who was part of the Shield with his brothers, before all the politics and power struggles and character evolution happened. You could see the real Roman Reigns, not the character, and he looked like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Let me ask you right now in the comments, did Roman Reigns' reaction look like he knew Moxley was coming back, or was he just as shocked as the rest of us? Because I've watched that moment 50 times and I still can't tell if this was a work or if Roman genuinely had no idea Moxley would be there. Now let's talk about the absolute chaos that happened after Moxley's music hit. Moxley didn't waste any time with dramatic poses or soaking in the moment. He sprinted to the ring like a man possessed, immediately started throwing wild strikes at Roman's attackers, and within seconds had completely changed the momentum of the entire situation. Moxley and Roman locked eyes for just a moment that felt like an eternity, and you could see the unspoken communication between them. Years of history, of brotherhood, of betrayal and separation and different paths, all conveyed in a single look. And then, without saying a word, they started fighting together like absolutely no time had passed since the Shield broke up. The chemistry was instant. Roman would hit a Superman punch and Moxley would immediately follow with his signature elbow strikes. Moxley would whip someone into the corner and Roman would be right there with a spear. They moved like a tag team that had been working together for decades, not like two people who hadn't been in the same ring together in over 5 years. And when they finally cleared the ring of all the attackers, when they were standing there alone in the middle of the ring, the crowd erupted with "Shield! Shield! Shield!" chants that could probably be heard from space. Roman and Moxley stood back to back, surveying the damage they'd done, breathing heavily, covered in sweat, and then they did the Shield fist bump. I'm not gonna lie to you, wrestling newsletter family, I cried. Actual tears. Because that fist bump represented everything we thought we'd never see again. It represented forgiveness. It represented brotherhood triumphing over business decisions and company loyalty. It represented the idea that some bonds are stronger than contracts and politics and everything else that divides the wrestling world. But here's where my excitement turns to concern, and why I need you to really pay attention to what I'm about to say. How did WWE pull this off? How did they convince Jon Moxley, who has been brutally honest about his negative experiences in WWE, who has built an incredible career in AEW as one of their top stars, who has repeatedly said he was happier after leaving WWE, how did they convince him to come back even for one night? The money must have been astronomical. We're talking Saudi Arabia money multiplied by getting our biggest defector back money. We're talking the kind of contract that makes you question whether this is just a one-time appearance or if Moxley actually signed a longer deal with WWE that we don't know about yet. And here's what really keeps me up at night: what does Tony Khan think about all this? The president of AEW just watched one of his top guys appear at a WWE event. Even if this was a one-night deal, even if Moxley returns to AEW next week like nothing happened, the optics of this are terrible for AEW. It makes them look like the minor leagues. It makes it seem like WWE is still the only place that matters for dream matches and historic moments. Trivia question for the comments: when was the last time a major AEW star appeared at a WWE event while still under AEW contract? Has this ever happened before? Let me know, because I'm genuinely trying to remember if there's any precedent for this. Let's discuss what this means for the Shield's legacy, because that's ultimately what this moment is about. The Shield wasn't just another faction. They were a phenomenon. They changed WWE when they debuted. They brought an intensity and believability to their performances that felt different from everything else happening at the time. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose were brothers, and fans believed it. When the Shield broke up in 2014, it was devastating. Seth's betrayal, hitting Roman with a chair, destroying the group from within, it's still one of the most shocking moments in WWE history. And while Seth and Roman have reunited briefly over the years, and while all three got back together for a few special appearances, it never felt the same because real-life circumstances kept getting in the way. Seth has evolved into the visionary. Roman became the tribal chief. And Dean Ambrose left WWE, became Jon Moxley, and built a completely different career where he could be himself without corporate restrictions. The three of them went on completely different paths, and it seemed like the Shield was permanently in the past, a great memory but nothing more. Crown Jewel 2025 just proved that wrong. It proved that the Shield isn't just a gimmick or a storyline, it's a bond that transcends companies and time and everything else. Roman's reaction to seeing Moxley showed that the brotherhood was real, that the emotion was genuine, that this meant something deeper than just two wrestlers appearing together. But here's my question, and I need you to answer this in the comments: does Moxley returning for one night cheapen what the Shield was? Or does it honor their legacy by showing that brotherhood never dies? Because I'm genuinely torn on this, and I want to know where the wrestling newsletter community stands. Now let's get into the business side of this, because we can't ignore the implications for WWE, AEW, and the wrestling industry as a whole. If Moxley signed even a short-term deal with WWE, that's a massive win for WWE and a devastating blow to AEW. It sends a message to every wrestler in AEW that WWE is still the biggest stage, still the place you go when you want the ultimate moments in your career. WWE has been aggressive lately about signing or re-signing top talent. They've brought back people who left on bad terms. They've repaired relationships that seemed irreparable. They've made it clear that if you're a draw, if you're a star, if you can make the money, they're willing to forgive the past and bring you home. Moxley returning fits perfectly into that strategy. It shows other AEW wrestlers that the door is open if they want to come back. It shows that WWE is willing to pay whatever it takes to get the talent they want. And most importantly, it shows that WWE can create moments that AEW simply cannot match in terms of scale and global impact. Tony Khan has to be furious right now. Even if he approved this appearance, which I doubt he did, the optics are terrible for his company. AEW has worked so hard to be seen as a legitimate alternative to WWE, a place where wrestlers can thrive creatively and financially. Moxley returning to WWE, even temporarily, undermines that narrative completely. Unless, and here's a wild theory, what if this was actually planned between WWE and AEW as some kind of business partnership? What if the forbidden door is opening wider than we thought, and we're going to see more crossover between the companies? What if Moxley appearing at Crown Jewel is actually the beginning of WWE and AEW working together instead of competing? I know that sounds insane, but think about the money potential. Imagine WWE and AEW doing a joint super show with the biggest dream matches possible. Imagine the pay-per-view buys. Imagine the mainstream attention. Imagine the possibilities for historic moments that could only happen if the two companies actually cooperated. Comment below if you think WWE and AEW are secretly working together, or if I've completely lost my mind with this conspiracy theory. Let's talk about what happens next, because Moxley showing up at Crown Jewel can't just be a one-time thing with no follow-up. WWE doesn't pay that much money for a single appearance without planning something bigger. So what's the endgame here? Scenario 1: Moxley signed a short-term deal for a few months. He's going to stick around for a limited run, help Roman with whatever storyline he's in, maybe get one final Shield reunion match with Seth Rollins at WrestleMania, and then return to AEW when his contract is up. This would be the safest option. It gives fans what they want without completely upending anyone's career trajectory. Scenario 2: Moxley signed a long-term deal and he's back in WWE permanently. He's done with AEW, he's returning to WWE full-time, and we're going to get years of dream matches and storylines that we never thought possible. This would be insane and would completely reshape the wrestling landscape. Scenario 3, this was truly a one-time appearance for a massive payday, and Moxley returns to AEW next week explaining that he did it for the money and the chance to help his brother one more time, but his home is AEW and that's where he's staying. This would be disappointing but would make sense if Moxley is still committed to AEW long-term. Scenario 4, this is the start of a Forbidden Door partnership where Moxley can work for both companies, appearing on WWE shows when it makes sense for the story while still being an AEW wrestler primarily. This would be revolutionary and could change how wrestling contracts work forever. Which scenario do you think is most likely? Drop your prediction in the comments and let's see who's right when we find out what happens next. Here's what nobody is talking about but absolutely should be Seth Rollins' reaction to all of this. Where was Seth during Crown Jewel? Why wasn't he there to complete the Shield reunion? The fact that it was just Roman and Moxley, without Seth, feels incomplete and leaves so many questions unanswered. Is Seth okay with Moxley being back? Remember, Seth was the one who betrayed the Shield originally. He's the one who has had the most complicated relationship with both Roman and Moxley over the years. He's rebuilt trust with Roman, but what about with Moxley? Has Moxley forgiven Seth for the betrayal 10 years ago? Do they have unresolved issues that need to be addressed? The smart story would be to build tension between Seth and Moxley when they finally reunite. Seth has changed so much since the Shield days. He's the visionary now, he's got his own faction, he's established himself as a main event player independent of his Shield history. Does he want to go back to being part of a group? Does he feel threatened by Moxley returning and potentially taking his spot as Roman's most trusted partner? This could create incredible drama if WWE handles it correctly. The three Shield members have to navigate their complicated history, their current positions in the company, and their feelings about reuniting after everything that's happened. That's compelling storytelling if they don't rush it or simplify it into just happy reunion with no consequences. Question for the comments: do you think Seth Rollins is happy about Moxley returning, or worried that it threatens his position with Roman? Give me your honest take. Let's talk about Paul Heyman's role in all of this, because the wise man has been Roman's most trusted advisor for years. Where does Heyman fit into a world where Roman has Jon Moxley back as his partner? Does Moxley trust Heyman? Does Heyman trust Moxley? Remember, Heyman is all about control and manipulation. Moxley is chaos incarnate, unpredictable, and unwilling to play political games. This creates natural conflict that WWE would be stupid not to explore. Heyman might see Moxley as a threat to his influence over Roman. He might try to drive a wedge between them, to remind Roman that Moxley left him years ago while Heyman has been there through everything. Heyman might plant seeds of doubt about Moxley's true intentions. Is he really back to help Roman, or does he have his own agenda? On the flip side, Moxley might see Heyman as a parasite who's been manipulating Roman for years. He might encourage Roman to distance himself from Heyman, to remember who he was before he became the tribal chief, to reconnect with his Shield roots instead of this corporate persona that Heyman helped create. This three-way dynamic between Roman, Moxley, and Heyman could be the most interesting character work WWE has done in years if they commit to exploring it fully. It's layers upon layers of potential conflict, alliance, betrayal, and redemption. Here's my controversial take that's going to make some of you angry: Jon Moxley returning to WWE might be the worst decision of his career. Stay with me before you click away. Moxley has built incredible momentum in AEW. He's been able to work his style of wrestling without restrictions. He's had creative freedom that WWE never gave him. He's been happy, by all accounts, doing what he loves without corporate interference. Coming back to WWE, even temporarily, risks undoing all of that. WWE is still WWE. They're going to want to control his character, script his promos, determine his storylines. Moxley thrived in AEW precisely because he escaped those restrictions. Returning to them, even for a dream moment like reuniting with Roman, might remind him of everything he hated about WWE in the first place. And what if the fans reject him? What if WWE Universe has moved on and doesn't care about Jon Moxley anymore because they've been watching Dean Ambrose's replacement characters for years? What if this return flops and damages his reputation as one of the top stars in the industry? I'm not saying this will happen, I'm saying it's a risk that Moxley is taking by returning to WWE, and we need to acknowledge that risk instead of just marking out over the nostalgia of the Shield reunion. Counter-argument time in the comments: am I wrong about this being risky for Moxley? Do you think returning to WWE is actually the best thing for his career right now? Let me know your thoughts. Let's discuss the match possibilities if Moxley sticks around WWE for even a few months. The dream matches are endless. Moxley vs. Cody Rhodes in a match that AEW fans thought they'd never see in WWE. Moxley vs. Gunther in a hard-hitting battle of two of the stiffest workers in wrestling. Moxley vs. LA Knight in a promo battle followed by a street fight. Moxley vs. Drew McIntyre in a collision of two guys who left WWE, became massive stars elsewhere, and returned as completely different performers. And of course, the biggest match of all, the Shield triple threat. Roman vs. Seth vs. Moxley for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship at WrestleMania 42. Can you imagine the build to that match? Can you imagine the video packages showing their entire history together? Can you imagine the emotion of three brothers who conquered WWE together, went their separate ways, and now have to fight each other for the ultimate prize? That match would be legendary. It would be talked about for decades. It would be the WrestleMania main event that defines an entire generation of wrestling fans. But WWE has to build to it properly. They can't rush it. They can't do it at the next premium live event just because fans are excited. They need to slow burn this story over 6 months minimum, letting every emotional beat hit naturally, earning every moment instead of just throwing it at us because they can. Comment below with your dream Jon Moxley match now that he's back in WWE. Who do you want to see him face, and what stipulation would make it perfect? Here's something that's been bugging me: the legal implications of Moxley appearing at a WWE event while possibly still under AEW contract. Wrestling contracts are complicated. There are exclusivity clauses, non-compete agreements, and all kinds of legal language that's supposed to prevent exactly this kind of situation. So either Moxley's AEW contract expired right before Crown Jewel and we didn't know about it, or there's some kind of special agreement in place that allowed this appearance, or we're about to see a legal battle between WWE and AEW over contract tampering and poaching talent. If it's the third option, if there's going to be legal drama, that could get ugly fast. AEW might sue WWE for interfering with their contracted talent. WWE might countersue claiming Moxley was free to negotiate. The whole thing could end up in court with depositions and discovery and all the messy business side of wrestling exposed to the public. That would be terrible for everyone involved. It would damage relationships, cost millions in legal fees, and create bad blood that would affect the industry for years. Let's hope that's not what's happening, that everyone involved handled this situation professionally and legally, and that we can just enjoy the storytelling without worrying about lawsuits. But knowing wrestling and how messy things can get behind the scenes, I'm not holding my breath that everything was handled perfectly. We might be in for some drama in the coming weeks as more details emerge about how this return actually happened. Let me wrap this up with my final thoughts on what Jon Moxley returning to WWE means for professional wrestling as a whole. This isn't just about one wrestler coming back to his old company. This is about the walls between wrestling promotions continuing to crumble. This is about wrestlers having more power and freedom than ever before to work where they want, when they want, without being locked into exclusive deals that prevent dream matches and historic moments. If Moxley can work for both WWE and AEW, or if he can move freely between companies based on what's best for his career and what creates the best stories, that's revolutionary. That changes the entire business model of professional wrestling. That gives power back to the performers instead of keeping it concentrated in the hands of promoters and executives. Roman Reigns' reaction to seeing Jon Moxley at Crown Jewel was a reflection of all of us: shock, disbelief, joy, confusion, and excitement about what comes next. We don't know where this story goes from here. We don't know if Moxley is back for one night or forever. We don't know how this affects WWE, AEW, The Shield, or the wrestling industry as a whole. But we do know that we just witnessed something special, something historic, something that we'll be talking about for years to come. And isn't that what wrestling is supposed to be about? Creating moments so powerful that they transcend the business aspects and the political drama and just make us feel something real? If you made it through this entire video, you're a true member of the Wrestling Newsletter family, and I need you to do 3 things right now. First, smash the like button if Jon Moxley returning to WWE broke your brain the way it broke mine. Second, leave a comment telling me whether you think Moxley is back permanently or if this was just a one-time appearance. I need to know what everyone thinks. And third, subscribe to Wrestling Newsletter and hit that notification bell, because this story is far from over, and we're going to be covering every single development, every rumor, every update as this situation continues to unfold. This is the biggest wrestling story of 2025, and you're not going to want to miss a single second of what happens next.